Evelyn hated the silence. Not the comfortable sort of silence that comes from a warm Sunday morning in a quiet house, but the raw, indifferent stillness of a city after midnight, a silence that seemed to listen. South Richmond, Virginia, in the late 1970s was not a place where quiet meant peace. It meant the shadows had taken over. The streets belonged to them, and whatever lurked within them. She locked her van in the lot outside the crumbling brick apartment complex and glanced across the rows of faded street lamps. Most were broken, their bulbs shattered long ago, leaving jagged glass sockets like blind eyes. The lot bordered a chain-link fence draped in tattered kazoo, the invasive vine that snaked through abandoned neighborhoods like silent witness to the city's decline. Beyond that, nothing but dark shapes of abandoned lots, whispers of old houses where people said murders had happened back when the newspapers dubbed Richmond the murder capital. Virginia's dark past hung thick in humid air, a land soaked in history and shadow, where old secrets never stayed buried. She adjusted her jacket against the sticky summer night. The hour after her night shift at the Richmond warehouse was always the worst. Her bones ached from standing guard for 10 dead hours, staring at doors nobody dare break through. But the ache was preferable to what waited when she came home. The haunted silence, the creak in halls, the thin walls that reminded her she lived alone. Her husband had left years ago. It was why she took the job. Alone meant survival or nothing. Tonight, though, the silence pressed heavier than usual. Evelyn walked faster toward the stairwell, her footsteps echoing too sharply in the cool, empty air. That's when she heard it. A faint scuff against concrete just behind her door. She froze, her finger tightening on the grocery bag handle. The sound came again, deliberate, something shifting its weight right outside, as though waiting. Drawing in a breath, Evelyn braced herself, slipped her key into the lock, and shoved quickly inside. She slammed the deadbolt into place, pressing her back to the wood. Her rising heart slowed only slightly, but silence inside her apartment was just as sharp, too hollow, too ready to be broken. And then the headlights came. Through the sheer curtain of her living room window, washed by dim moonlight, a pair of beams swept across the lot, low, heavy, and deliberate. She tilted her head and noticed the shadow of a truck easing into the space beside her van. It crawled closer than it should, bumper nearly kissing her van side. The truck was navy blue, though in the dark it looked black, and something about the way it idled unsettled her. Not a neighbor's vehicle, not one she had ever seen. Yet it lingered. Evelyn could vaguely make out the silhouette of two figures inside. Neither moved to get out. They simply sat, watching. She backed away from the window, not daring to clutch the blinds for fear of betraying her motion. Heart thundering, she reached for her phone, but the rotary dial's weight, the stiffness of the cord, seemed useless. Call who? The Richmond police? They'd laugh. A parked truck? Just wait out, they'd say. And then, sudden salvation. Red and blue lights splashed across the lot. A cruiser slid smoothly into view, pulling up behind the Navy truck. Its siren was silent, just a crackle of the police radio filling the night like static. Evelyn exhaled. Relief, fast, dizzying, broke through her chest. They had seen it. They knew, but as she pressed her face against the pane to watch, the relief turned cold, because the Navy truck didn't move, and the patrol car didn't step out. Its light spun, a carnival of red and blue fire, but the figure inside never merged. Two vehicles, engines idling, each one waiting. And Evelyn, watching from the dark, realized with creeping dread. Who exactly were they waiting for? The patrol car's lights painted cracked asphalt in eerie pulses. Red, blue, red, blue. It was like a beacon of safety gone wrong, its protection twisted into something theatrical. Evelyn's stomach turned. She wanted to believe the officer inside was a savior, but the silence said otherwise. She remembered the warnings. South Richmond was thick with stories. Killers hiding on fire escapes, break-ins where victims swore the intruder had been standing in their bedroom for hours before waking them. The Richmond Times-Dispatch had run headline after headline about strangers snatched off quiet roads and bodies dumped near the James River. This place curled around you like ivy, slow, suffocating, inescapable. From her window, Evelyn squinted at the truck. The driver's shape shifted, just enough for her to tell he was watching the cruiser as much as she was. Then, deliberately, the driver leaned back and shut off his headlights. The lot went dark again, except for the spinning patrol car lights. A chill spied up Evelyn's spine. She jerked her curtains shut and pressed both hands against her mouth to hush her breathing. Running for a neighbor? No, most of them were as reclusive as herself. Doors bolted, blinds nailed shut against the city's nightly threats. Instead, she found herself drifting toward her kitchen drawers. The third one stuck, always had, but behind it lay her father's old hunting knife. She carried it from Hopewell when she married, more nostalgia than practicality. But now she clutched at her side, steel catching a faint kitchen light. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Her body ached from standing still, ears strained against the hum of 2 idling engines. Then, another sound, a knock, gentle, deliberate. Her breath caught, so hard she nearly gagged. It came from the front door, where moments ago she'd heard scuffing on the landing. "Ma'am." The voice was calm, professional. A man deep-throated. "Ma'am, Richmond PD. Just need to talk to you." Evelyn's pulse screamed through her veins. She slid one cautious step forward, still gripping the knife. Something was wrong. If the voice belonged to the officer from the patrol car, why hadn't she heard a door slam? No footsteps across the gravel? No creak of the stairs up to her floor? "Ma'am," the voice repeated, "I saw you at the window. You don't need to be scared." Her knees threatened to fold. She knew Richmond police wore dark uniforms, nearly black at night, so had plenty of men who prowled these neighborhoods pretending to be them. No badge would save her if she opened that lock. Down below, the engine still idled. She peeked once more through the corner of the curtain. The patrol car was still there, lights spinning. The truck, too. Neither door had moved. Then who was at her own? The knock came again, this time sharper. "You don't open," Evelyn whispered to herself, voice trembling. "You don't, just don't." Her apartment suddenly felt small, too exposed. She backed away, into the shadowed hallway that led to her bedroom. Every instinct screamed to grab her keys, slip out the fire escape at the rear, and make for the street. But that path led right past the lot, right past the truck, the cruiser, both of them waiting like predators at the edge of a trap. The knock stopped. The silence returned. And that silence, the listening kind, was worse than anything. Then footsteps, slow, dragging, moving down the hall outside, not away from her door, but along the wall, as though the man were testing the thin plaster, filling the rooms with his presence. They stopped directly outside her bedroom wall. Evelyn forced her breath down and pressed a knife to her chest. Her mind reeled. Should she call the station? The warehouse had radios. Maybe she could reach one of the men there. And then, outside her window, something exploded. Not gunfire, glass. Shattering. Evelyn dropped into a crouch, ears ringing. The sound had come from the lot below. With trembling fingers, she eased up enough to glance through the blinds. The Navy truck's windshield had been smashed. A spiderweb of broken glass glittered under the patrol car's lights. But no figure had moved to do it. The red-blue flashes showed the truth in fragments. The driver slumped motionless against his wheel, his passenger rigid as stone. Neither alive, at least not in any earthly sense Evelyn could understand. She staggered backward, horror bending her stomach. And then from the patrol car, the officer's door finally opened. The officer's door creaked open with deliberate slowness, cacophonous in the silence. The patrol car's light spun, casting twisted shadows over shattered glass and the unmoving truck in the lot below. Evelyn pressed herself against the wall, knife glinting between trembling fingers. The uniformed figure stepped out, black boots crunching against broken glass. He was tall, postured rigidly upright, his face obscured beneath the brim of a charcoal hat. Richmond's police wore hats like that, but he moved like a marionette, every limb too stiff, every motion a fraction too slow. He paused, head tilting up toward Evelyn's building. The red and blue lights painted his face, wide cheekbones, hollow eyes. For a moment, she thought he looked straight at her, but his gaze passed through her window, empty and endless. Evelyn ducked back behind the blinds, heart pounding. She fought the urge to call out, to anyone, to herself, to the past. Instead, she held the knife tight and forced herself to listen. The officer circled the truck, boots scraping glass from the windshield, then stopped beside the slumped driver. With mechanical precision, he leaned into the open window. Evelyn strained, trying to see, but the dark consumed his shape. Moments ticked by. The officer straightened, a slick glint in his hand. Something metallic, sharp. He held it to the light. A badge? A knife? Evelyn couldn't tell. He turned and scanned the apartment building with slow deliberation, exhaling a misty plume into the humid Virginia night. Suddenly, Evelyn's kitchen phone rang. Not the muted rotary click from before, but a shrill burst. She jumped, nearly dropping her knife. Her stomach curled. No one called this late except the warehouse, or sometimes her sister in Hopewell. She debated whether to answer, hand hovering above the receiver. On the third ring, she grabbed it. "Hello?" Her voice sounded stranger than she remembered. Strained, a stranger in her own skin. A long silence like static. Then a hiss. "Ma'am, are you there?" She froze. It was the same voice as at her door. Calm, deep cold. Richmond PD. Or someone pretending. "You should stay inside," it said. "Don't open the door, no matter what you hear." She glanced back at the window. The officer had moved away from the truck, strolling in easy circles. A predator marking territory, slow and deliberate. "Why are you here?" she whispered. The line crackled. "There's been trouble. There's danger outside. You're safer where you are." The words lingered, but Evelyn caught an undertone she couldn't place. Something familiar, intimate, wrong. She hung up, heart hammering. The glass in the lot glittered with pale, ghostly reflection. The truck's passengers still hadn't moved. Evelyn flashed to the past. Her father's warnings, the way her mother used to double lock every door in Petersburg, repeating stories about Virginia's haunted by night. Maybe those stories were true. Her eyes darted around the room. The shadows had grown longer, draped over the worn rug, the faded armchair, the pile of bills stacked on the table. Everywhere she looked, something seemed to shudder just beneath the threshold of vision. The officer began walking toward the building, each step agonizingly slow. Evelyn lunged to the chain on her front door, checking it, rechecking it. She could hear the man again, the knock echoing softly as though polite. Another step, another knock. She stared at the door, trying to remember everything she knew about Richmond's police, what their badges looked like, what their voices sounded like after midnight. This man was wrong. Everything about him was wrong. His face had no lines, no warmth. His badge was gleaming, unreal. She pressed herself against the door as the knock came again. "Evelyn," the voice whispered. She stumbled back in shock. This time, the voice called her name. It wasn't just a police officer anymore. Someone knew her. "How do you know my name?" she gasped, not caring if he heard her. A rustle from the hallway. The scrape of shoe soles against the old carpet outside. She heard movement, not just from the officer, but from somewhere deep in the building, as if the night had woken up. The officer's hand pressed against the door, a palm so pale it seemed to glow in the dark. He leaned close, whispering words Evelyn couldn't make out. Her knife slipped from sweating hands. She reached for it, knees weak. Through the peephole, all she saw was darkness. Suddenly, every light in the apartment flickered out. The power buckled, plunging Evelyn into pitch black. In the ravaged silence, the only sound was the unbroken hum of engines from below, and the voice at the door. "Don't open," it whispered again. "Don't let us in." Evelyn's ears throbbed in the blackness. The engine hum outside seemed louder now, magnified by the absence of light. Interwoven with the harsh breathing she couldn't tell was hers or someone else's. She pressed her back against the cool plaster wall, knife recovered and slick in her grip, trying desperately to listen for any sound that wasn't imagined. The only comfort she found was the echo of her father's voice in her memory, teaching her as a child in Hopewell to move quietly, to survive unseen. But now, the threat wasn't just outside. The air within felt electric, brittle, charged by something wholly unnatural. In the parking lot, the police car's swirling lights faded abruptly, their color glow swallowed by darkness. For a moment, Evelyn imagined the world had ended. Time stopped, Richmond's notorious streets cut off from any hope. Footsteps echoed on the stairs, a heavier stride, deliberate. Evelyn retreated down her hallway and into the bedroom, tripping over an old quilt that tangled around her ankle. The familiar shape did nothing to comfort her. It felt like a knot on a hangman's rope. She crouched beneath the bed, breasts shallow, shadows pressed close. In her mind, questions whirled. Was she hallucinating from exhaustion? Or had the night become a stage for something she'd always feared? Stories her grandmother whispered, legends about spirits seeking revenge for wrongs done in old Virginia. From beneath the bed, Evelyn heard the front door rattle. Not violently, soft, persistent, a test of will. She tried to remember if she'd reset the deadbolt after entering. The hiss of wind through broken glass outside reminded her of the truck's shattered windshield and the motionless figures within. Then came a laugh. Low, guttural, cold, echoing in the stairwell. Not the officers, not anyone she recognized. It wormed its way through the walls, each syllable a threat. Evelyn's phone rang again. The piercing sound carved through her dread. She crawled out, awkward, desperate, grabbing the receiver as it jangled. She whispered, "Who is this?" Another long silence. Then a different voice, female, warm, trembling on the edge of panic. "Evelyn, it's Marta. Are you all right?" Relief surged. Marta was her neighbor across the hall, a nurse who worked odd shifts. "Stay inside," Evelyn rasped. Before Marta could answer, her own line crackled. 2 calls fighting for control. The other voice, the cold one, pushed through. "You shouldn't have answered," it hissed. "We know you're home." Evelyn slammed the phone back into its cradle, hands shaking. She crawled back into the hall. Through the sliver window above her bed, she saw thick black shapes, figures moving awkwardly near the patrol car, then creeping toward the apartment's side entrance. Was the officer leading them, or were they drawn by something else? A metallic scraping, a knife on the handrail, boots on cement steps. Evelyn watched as the haze settled on the lot. The world outside looked wrong beneath the shadows, like a photograph spoiled by water. She considered her escape route. The fire escape at the back, a narrow ladder twisting down into the alley. But if the invaders knew her name, knew her habits, that route might already be a dead end. Outside, a voice rose from the shadows, warbled and inhuman. "Evelyn, come down. Come see the truth." She edged back from the windows as the words echoed, swelling stronger and colder. The walls seemed to ripple, shivering beneath their thin paint. The building itself groaning under some unnatural weight. From the direction of Marta's door, Evelyn heard another crash, which splintered, followed by a muffled scream. The shadows had made their move. Evelyn gripped her knife tighter and turned toward the fire escape. The corridor was a gauntlet of darkness. Every apartment seemed locked down, every door silent save for the chaos behind Marta's. Evelyn crept past, gaze fixed forward, wishing for the night to end. She risked a glance inside Marta's shattered door. Flickering candlelight revealed shapes, too many to count, crowded into the small living room. Figures moving with jerky, marionette-like gestures. Evelyn's blood iced as she saw the officer among them, eyes glassy, limbs unraveled. She bolted for the rear window, fumbling with a rusty latch, teeth biting down hard enough to bleed. She shoved it open and clambered onto the fire escape ladder, wind whipping at her, voices echoing from below. A glance downward revealed the alley swimming in shadow, the Navy truck visible, parked askew and now empty, passenger and driver gone. Patrol car silent, doors open, abandoned. Only the rising fog from the James River separated Evelyn from the emptiness. She climbed down, feet scraping iron. Her heart pulsed, vision wild. She landed in the alley's greasy darkness, behind piles of trash and broken crates. Then, as she slipped between buildings toward Hull Street's flickering neon, a single thought seized her. They're not just following her, they're waiting for her, here in Richmond, in Virginia's deepest darkness. The fog thickened as Evelyn stumbled to the back alleys of South Richmond, the stench of damp brick and rotting wood thick in the chill Virginia air. Her breath came in ragged bursts, sending icy trails into the night. Somewhere ahead, the distant murmur of the James River rippled beneath the city's fractured skyline. She had no plan, only raw survival instinct, a need to outrun the nightmare clawing at her heels. But something deeper stirred in her mind, a memory flickering like a candle threatened by wind. Whispers she'd heard growing up, half-forgotten tales of a man named Joseph Mallory, a truck driver from the 1950s who prowled Richmond's darkest corners, rumored to have killed more than a dozen women. The newspaper stories had been hushed after his sudden disappearance, replaced by urban legends and warnings. Evelyn's grandmother used to warn her, eyes dark with something between fear and sorrow. The past never really leaves Virginia. It waits in the dark. It waits for the right moment to come back. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed from beneath a crumbling bridge. The skeletal remains of an old warehouse looming like a tomb. Evelyn felt drawn toward it, like a moth to a dying flame. As she neared, the fog parted to reveal the navy blue Chevy truck parked quietly beneath the rusting beams. No driver sat inside, but the back door swung open, revealing nothing but shadows. Her hands trembled, clutching the hunting knife tighter as she stepped closer. Suddenly, the air shifted. The world grew colder, heavier. From the darkness across the street, a figure emerged, tall, gaunt, eyes like burning coals in the blackness. It was not the officer, not the men she'd seen before, but something older, fouler, the unmistakable presence of vengeance. "You shouldn't have run," the voice hissed, thick with malice and wearied age. "This land belongs to those who remembered the bloodshed." Evelyn swallowed hard, stepping back. Her heart thudded painfully, but her voice found strength. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure laughed, a sound like bones grinding on stone. "I am the shadow of Joseph Mallory, cursed to roam these streets until justice is paid. And you carry his reckoning." Suddenly, the warehouse's broken windows flared with ghostly light. Faces, distorted, anguish, glowed behind the glass, reaching out with endless hands. The spirits of his victims, trapped in eternal limbo. Evelyn realized a horror she'd witnessed. The frozen truck with the dead drivers, the silent police car, the faceless officer. They were echoes, remnants of the past manifesting in the present. The city itself was haunted by its most terrible evils. "But why me?" she whispered, tears blurring her vision. The shadow's grin widened. "Because you are kin, Evelyn, your bloodline, tainted by the sins of those who looked the other way." Memories flooded her. Her father's whispered confessions, the family's silence around her mother's sudden disappearance years before. "You must end this," the entity growled. "Find the truth hidden beneath Richmond streets, or be claimed by the darkness yourself." Summoning every shred of courage, Evelyn dashed toward the bridge's underbelly, heart pounding through the night's deadly silence. Hidden in the rubble, she found a rusted metal box, old police files, reports long buried by time and fear. In the pale moonlight, the names spilled out. Women missing, blamed on the shadows, named only in whispers. Among them, her mother. As she clutched the documents, a cold hand brushed her shoulder. She whirled, knife raised, to find the ghostly faces slowly materializing, no longer threatening, but pleading for peace. Evelyn whispered prayer, promising to be their voice, to unearth the truth for Richmond's forgotten souls. The fog lifted. The night seemed to exhale. The evil that haunted the city's heart receded for now. Evelyn limped back to the breaking dawn, carrying the weight of history and the hope of reckoning. Weeks later, news reports broke open Richmond's darkest secrets. Excavations beneath old warehouses revealed evidence, finally exposing the crimes long covered up. Evelyn stood in the sunlight, hands shaking but spirit unbroken. The city was scarred but healing. The shadows lingered, but no longer hungry, at least not tonight. South Richmond's night was still heavy with secrets, but Evelyn knew the darkness was not invincible. In Virginia, the past never dies. It waits, watches, and sometimes it lets the light in